I had my own creepy encounter today, but now that I'm experiencing it, I wish I could go back to simply enjoying lurking other people's stories on this sub. Anyways, this story starts today around 5:30 or 6 p.m. when my husband and I decided to take our dog for a walk before the first autumn storm settled in. We live in a newer neighborhood that consists of those cookie-cutter modern homes. Most of the people here are retired or new families with young children. This may seem to be a strange detail, but it factors in. People in this neighborhood in town are super casually dressed. It's a small town and there's not a whole lot of reason to be fancy. We were walking our usual residential route when we spotted a young teen girl who was impeccably dressed. She was tall for the age she looked. I'd estimate 5'6" or 5'7", no older than 12 to 14. She was wearing a long black trench-style coat, a high-neck black shirt, a brown pencil skirt, knee-high black socks, expensive-looking loafers, and a black beret-style hat. She also had long, white blonde hair. She had no makeup on. But the strangest part of all was the expression on her face. She was totally vacant. No emotion. Didn't move any of her facial features. She walked by and continued ahead on the same street that we were walking down. We were walking towards a cul-de-sac that leads to the woods and eventually to a park area. Initially, we both talked about how nice she was dressed and continued on. As we walked, we were deep in conversation about work, and I kept my eyes on her as she was walking ahead of us. All of a sudden, she abruptly turned around and walked back towards us. I got excited that I'd get the opportunity to tell her she looked nice. But before she got back to where we were, she turned left and walked up another street. Her movements were so odd, stiff and almost robotic. I shrugged it off and figured we'd never see her again. We finally get to our destination, a small park in the middle of the residential neighborhood where we can let the dog off the leash for a little runtime. This park is basically a grassy field with a house on the left and a thicket of trees on the right-hand side. I should mention it's not a forest, just some trees and shrubbery with a house behind them. As we made our way through the grassy field, I hear the sound of breaking branches in the thicket of trees on my right. My first instinct was that it was a deer. We have lots of deer where we live. I didn't see anything at first, but I kept hearing branches snapping next to me. And eventually through the trees I spot some long blonde hair. I don't know if it was the wind or a physical reaction to what I was seeing, but I got goosebumps all over. My husband and I went silent as we walked past her, but get this, she was facing away from us, just standing and staring at the trees, perfectly still. She didn't move. It also seemed she got to where she was unnaturally fast. We should have beat her to the park. We looked at each other and I momentarily considered asking if she was okay. We decided maybe she was taking some photos for Instagram and just wanted us two weirdos to go away and keep walking. So we kept walking through the park and out the other side to another street in the neighborhood. As I'm leashing my dog, I see her rapidly walking towards us again. Head down, walking with purpose. I whisper to my husband, "Okay, this girl is starting to freak me out, let's go." And we continue walking. We make our way across the street to walk the long way around to tire out our dog. She continues walking down the street we crossed, so again, I figure we won't see her again. We go back to discussing work, enjoying our walk, and we take a final turn down the street back towards our house. As we turn the corner, there she is walking towards us again. Now, the way she went, it would have taken her way longer to catch up to us where we were. I also figured this might be the opportunity to compliment her outfit again, as I didn't get the chance to earlier. So as she got close to us, I attempted to make eye contact with her to smile and initiate conversation. But as she got into talking distance, I got the worst feeling. It's hard to explain, almost nauseated. She didn't turn to face us. She walked by with the same vacant, motionless expression she had earlier. Continued to walk with purpose towards apparently no destination. As we finished our walk and approached our house, I continually looked over my shoulder and down the other side of the street to make sure she wasn't around. For some reason, I didn't want her to know where we lived. We made it into the house just as the rain started to fall in big drops. We ate dinner and forgot all about the strange girl from our walk. That was until I went to our bedroom to change into my pajamas. Our bedroom is on the front of the house and it faces the street. I made my way over to the window to close my blinds, and out in the pouring rain, I saw her walking under the streetlights. I quickly shut off my bedroom light, scared she would spot me, but there she was, still walking too fast to be walking casually. I have watched her speed walk by the front of our house 6 times in the last hour. Next time she walks by, I'm going to attempt to talk to her. Update at 11:46 p.m. I haven't seen her walk by since around 9:20. Mind you, the rain and wind is absolutely insane outside. I'm hoping she's safe. We'll update again if anything changes. Update at 1:36 p.m. the next day. Weather has cleared up. No further sign of the girl. Mind you, I work from home and haven't left the house yet today. I will be taking the dog for the same walk this evening. We'll update if anything strange occurs. Update at 10:36 p.m. the next day. Okay, kind of freaking out. Had a relatively normal day today, didn't see her anywhere. Went back into my bedroom to find my phone charger and found a strange substance running down at the outside of my front window. I heard it tapping on the window when I was watching TV about 30 minutes ago, but I figured it was the wind. Still stormy outside. It looks like there was a nose print. I don't believe this was there during the daytime. I'm shaking. I've locked all my doors. This happened tonight, just getting it off my chest. Was driving home from work and decided I wanted a pizza. Pulled into a pizza shop near home. Saturday night and it's pretty busy. It's staffed by 3 young girls. When I say young girls, I'm talking like teenagers. I don't know how it is elsewhere in the world, but working at a pizza shop here in Australia is very much a get paid cash after school type job. As I'm ordering, the girl taking the order is super distracted, like she's looking past me at something. Then as I'm trying to pay, she yells out to the 2 other girls prepping and cooking something like, "Oh, thank God, Matt is back." I'll use the name Matt for internet reasons and because I don't remember the name she said. As she said that, a delivery boy walked into the store and pretty much came in and straight away did a 180 turn, taking more pizzas and leaving. I pay and turn to sit and wait. And that's when I see what the girl had been looking at behind me. Standing next to the entry door, peering through the shop face window, is a visibly terrifying man. He was about 5'8", in his late 20s or early 30s, rat-like, pudgy, unnaturally pale with dark spots under his eyelids, long and greasy dark hair and sharp-looking, almost cylindrical teeth. Weirdly, I thought, maybe that's her mate. Obviously, I got bad vibes, but my initial reaction was just confusion at the sight of him. Anyway, another guy comes in to pick up some pizzas pretty much right as I sit down, and the girl freezes while serving him too, but this time she apologizes and says something like, "Sorry, I'm a bit distracted because this guy won't stop coming to my work and staring at me through the window. My boss banned him, but he comes back when he's gone." I take a proper look at the window guy now, and he's like pointing at her and waving and making other weird gestures. This instantly made me very uncomfortable, so without really thinking, I went outside and confronted the guy about what he was doing. I had a fair bit of adrenaline and don't really remember what I said, but it was like, "You have to leave, you're scaring the workers." He just stared at me and did this like weird wheeze in exasperation, like a dismissive wheeze. Then through a wheezy voice he said, "I'm not doing anything." I said, "You're being a creep and you're banned to get out of here," then went back in. The creep walked off and I thought it was solved. The girl thanked me and asked what he said. I said he didn't really say anything. And she explained the things she had to the other guy before, and also said he had said some really inappropriate and gross things to her. Just as I'm sitting back down, the guy comes in with a bank card in his hand. I said, "What did I just tell you? Get out of here." But he makes a beeline straight to the counter and orders a pizza. The girl froze up and I could tell she made the choice to put through his order because she was scared of how he would react if she didn't. Then he came and sat right down next to me and said, "See, if she didn't want me here, she wouldn't have let me get a pizza." It gets a bit hazy for me here because this is where the trauma happened, but I'm pretty sure I told him he was disgusting. Then he got really angry. He stood up bent forwards towards me and was screaming, "I haven't done anything wrong. What did I do? I'm a good boy, I've got a good heart. Tell me what I did. How would you feel if someone said stuff like that about you?" And it's whack because even though I saw exactly what he had been doing and the effect it had had on the teenage girl at the counter, I felt like I was wrong for telling him to stop. He was right up close to me now and yelling. He was fully raging out and I wasn't sure what he was going to do next. So I just kept my eyes locked on his and tried to look like I wasn't afraid of him and anticipate any incoming act of violence. He was just shrieking and screaming. Then the eldest of the workers came out from the kitchen and said, "Stop yelling, if you're going to yell you have to leave." And he did stop yelling. His whole demeanor changed. Now he was kind of jovial and conciliatory. He put his fist out to fist bump me, and he's going, "You're a good guy, I can tell," or something like that. I wouldn't fist bump him and he sat back down. Now he was just talking at me, blabbering and stuff. I wasn't really listening and told him I didn't want to talk to him. The girl he had been targeting was just staring, making these big, freaked out eyes. They fast-tracked his pizza and tried to send him on his way. And out the front he started talking to this really big guy and was pointing at me through the window. I spoke to the girl and she thanked me profusely, even though I didn't really do anything. I actually felt like I made it worse and said she gets really freaked out because he comes by when none of the male workers are at the shop. She also said the guy had found her on Facebook and had been sending her creepy messages. I told her to make sure her parents knew about this and to tell the police. It turns out the big guy at the front was the owner. The girl had called him and he'd come back to the store. He finished talking to the guy and came back in behind the counter. And afterwards, the creeper let out the longest, guttural and rage-filled scream. I'm guessing his ban had been re-explained to him. I genuinely worry that maybe the workers weren't taking this guy's behavior and fixation on a teenage girl as the dangerous threat it is. He was unreasonable and irrational and just all around the scariest person I've encountered for a while. He just had this energy to him, this sort of juvenile malignancy. Who knows what he's capable of? Update: I made a police report, thanks for the kind words. I was on vacation with my family when I was about 14. I was in the pool which had a bar attached, and I was casually talking to this group of British people. I want to say it was all guys, but I think I remember a girl with them. I started drinking a bit with them. The legal drinking age was 18, but the people who I was drinking with gave me an extra wristband they had, because apparently they were leaving the resort that day and wanted to give it to someone. My parents didn't know about this, and neither of them knew I was drinking. They were clearly a lot older, and kept putting drink after drink in my hand, and I was ecstatic because I was, well, getting drunk in a pool in Cancun and out of sight from my mother. They started to try to convince me that one of the guys in the group was 15, and that I should talk to him because he liked me. Even then I knew he definitely wasn't 15, but he also wasn't as old as the others who seemed to be in their late 30s. In hindsight, I'm thinking mid to late 20s. I was young and just thought they were joking around with me. They kept telling me he liked me and I should go hang out with him. I laughed it off the first time, but they kept suggesting. Keep in mind, this whole time my dad was in the same pool talking to his friend, and he had his eyes on me for almost the whole time. My parents are very strict. He didn't know what I was drinking was alcoholic, and the pool was big enough that you couldn't hear what was being said. At that point, I was totally wasted, and my first time actually getting seriously drunk. I don't even remember leaving the pool with this guy trying to tell me he was 15, but apparently my dumbass did because I remember thinking he was cute. The resort is huge, and I don't know how I don't remember walking through the whole thing and not remembering it. I wonder what we spoke about. The next thing I remember is walking and approaching a bus stop that was a 10-minute walk from the resort. I know it was 10 minutes because my family and I often went to the bus stop to explore Cancun. He told me I had a nice body and asked me if I ever had sex. I just started laughing, and he sat on the bus bench and pulled me onto his lap. At this point, my world is spinning, so I don't protest, even though I remember thinking I wanted to be back at the pool. It was then that something beautiful happened. I threw up all over him. Remember, I'm on his lap at this point, so it was like right in his face and on his chest, and kept throwing up, like the Exorcist level projectile vomiting. He was extremely grossed out, and I don't remember what was said, but we ended up walking back to the resort and I never saw him again. I remember feeling so embarrassed, which is ridiculous in hindsight. I wobbled back to the pool area, covered in throw up, where my mom had called the police and her and my dad were freaking out. My mom's piercing voice sobered me up a bit because I remember these parts a lot clearer even though they're still hazy. They saw how drunk I was and demanded to know what happened, so I told them. Then they got furious. My mom was adamant on finding that guy or his friends who had all disappeared from the pool. I didn't really see what the big deal was back then and why she wanted to find them. To this day, I think about what would have happened if I hadn't thrown up like that and actually left with him. I was 5'2" and 14 years old, and he was at least a foot taller than me, and definitely not a minor. I remember when he was close to me with no one around, and even in my extremely drunk state, I started to get a bit nervous. My parents took me back to our hotel room, and I spent hours in the bathtub just throwing up. My mom was furious, like completely livid. I wasn't too surprised at that because she yelled at me over trivial things all the time. So was my dad, which surprised me because he's always so easygoing. And honestly, probably would have been a bit amused at me being drunk and throwing up. Not in a cruel way, but because I was learning a lesson about alcohol that we all eventually do. He actually straight up told me that at some point before this whole vacation. But now I know that his anger wasn't directed towards me. He was cursing about the guy. I was still throwing up in the bathtub, and they had both went into the kitchen area to talk away from me. but I could vaguely hear my dad cursing terribly while speaking to my mom in our native language, and I was actually scared. I couldn't quite focus on his voice because I was legitimately drifting in and out of consciousness at that point, but I remember getting less scared and more just sad because I felt like I had disappointed him. He never got mad like that towards me. But then again, I realized later he wasn't angry at me. And he wasn't angry at the drinking. He was angry at that scumbag. I remember wondering why they were making such a big deal. It was a few years later that I understood. Later on that day, because this all happened at like 2 in the afternoon, so I was at least cognizant by dinner time. I expected my mom to blow up at me over dinner when I was sober, as she usually does. That woman's like a live fuse, but they were both kinda just quiet and staring at me and didn't leave my side. I can't imagine what they were going through, knowing about the danger I had been in hours before, staring at me like it was a miracle I was there. I was young and stupid, but I would like to give my deep thanks and gratitude to beer for consistently annoying my stomach to the point of projectile vomiting.